Okay, we're back, and I'm just gonna edit these together. I'll just Frankenstein the two sides together. Gremlins chewed through the wires, or something. Starlink satellite fell, hit the 5G tower. No big deal. We were talking about BlackRock, the 33-mile circumference magnetic stone in the center of everything, and the significance of the monolith at the UN, and how it correlates to the monolith Hilton, the Millennium Hotel, at ground zero. So that's what we were on, and that's when they glitched us. And it's important to take note of what we're talking about when we get hit by the gremlins. And maybe some of you remember, but a couple of years ago, we were swarmed by bots advertising basically adult sites, sex bots, by the dozens. And we would have to just hammer away at them live stream after live stream. And I didn't remember how many there were until I went to the dungeon recently to free somebody. And I just saw there were hundreds of bots that we had to, whack-a-mole. And I think that was a form of attack. It's like this seeming random bot attack. I think it was targeted. Okay, so we're back on. We'll let people catch up. And of course, I'm going to merge the two streams, so no big deal. We're talking about the space station. And in my view, the Tower of Babel concept, which has been attached to New York, attached to America, attached to the West, and the fall of this tower, this long protracted story, which has been telegraphed in so many of these major movie productions, I think it's being played out in a series of scenes. We got the Titanic sinking, the sinking of the Twin Towers, and I think the completion of it is the fall of the space station. And there's predictive programming in 2001 Space Odyssey for exactly that. In fact, we were just going over one of my favorite analysts of 9/11 symbolism and Kubrick symbolism, and it's the website called chartword.com. And I can't emphasize enough how cutting edge this guy's work is. And he only wrote a couple of, like 3 or 4 articles on the subject. But what he maintains is that Stanley Kubrick was the primary director of 9/11. And I mean, if you could ascribe directorship to any major psyop, and you should be able to, you could point to the various contributors to the script itself, those who contain predictive programming messaging. But as far as the directors who execute these drills, they have to have it. And Kubrick is consistently associated with many transformative psyops of the 20th and now 21st century. But looking at it very closely, as Chartword has, he's found connections in 2001 Space Odyssey that even show what seems to be this connection between planes hitting the Twin Towers and something with the space station. And I can show you these connections. We were just going over the Hilton logo and how the Hilton logo is emblematic of 9/11. You've got the Twin Towers, and you've got the flight path of the plane, and you've got the hotel right there at ground zero. But we'll get back to that. Lesko says, Gremlins be gone. Lean Dion says, Hobots flooded the tank. Oh, yeah. Yeah, those Hobots. And, I was actually arguing with some, not Hobots, but QAnon people today, all day long. They were like, don't you want to save the children? It's like, if you didn't save any children. These Q people. They're not real digital. They call themselves soldiers. Like, this is a hard day of battle. It's like, what do you mean? Are your thumbs sore from doom scrolling? So listen to this. And then I'll show you what I've been calling and I spell it with a Q, crackheads. And one of them I refer to as well, you'll see. So Doc Holiday, one of the worst accounts, one of the worst Q spammers. It's all for engagement. It's all engagement bait. And I'm pretty sure most of those who respond to their tweets are bots. But he said, I don't care if we've had disagreements in the past. If you're a true patriot, I will forgive you. I support Anons forever. We volunteered our time because we love America. We don't ask for anything in return. We did it for a better future and to destroy evil. I will never seek praise. I don't need it. I want to thank all the Anon patriots. We have battles ahead, but we must be grateful for how far we've come. So this is Doc Q, who has been spamming Twitter for 4 years with trust the plan nonsense. And to him, this has been a battle, a fight against evil. And this has been him volunteering for America as a patriot. So I said, you're an anonymous crackhead asshat pretending to be a white hat digital soldier for Q. And that comment triggered a lot of people. And I spelled crackhead with a Q. I don't want to offend crackheads. And so I said, I think Q is a hilarious joke. It's an operation out of the White House. You're not capable of processing facts that contradict your delusions. This is sad, but here's the truth. And I gave him a link to marcusgoldfinch.com where you can learn about how the Q PSYOP is run out of the White House, and everybody knows about it, including Alex Jones, including Joe Rogan. Now, the response I got here from one of these persons was, don't you want to save the children? Basically. She said, who's crying? Look at you. No, let me find the one. Don't you want to save the children? And I said, you're crying because you didn't rescue the tunnel children in time and JFK didn't rise from the dead. But the pushback I'm getting is from people who say that they're part of an operation to save the children, and why would I be against it? Like, if you're not for Q, then you're not for rescuing children. Like, you see how problematic that is, especially considering their dismal record of actually rescuing children. Because the whole Q movement got behind Tim Ballard, who was supposedly rescuing children. Turns out the guy's he's now being investigated and possibly charged with human trafficking. Yes, Lucid Streams. Now I'm spelling crackho with a Q. All right, Culty Talk says his thumbs. Yeah, thanks. The thumb thing. So they're doom scrolling, and they're calling it battle. It's an embarrassment that they get to call themselves patriots. It's an embarrassment that being a patriot is doom scrolling, spreading QAnon breadcrumbs on behalf of Donald Trump's campaign. It's basically propaganda mules set loose, acting like they're making a difference, but it's an echo chamber. It's a sick cult, and I'm trying to help them, but they're addicted, and they can't put it down. It's hopium. You want to know what's in the Q pipe? It's hopium. And their hopium isn't pleasant because their hope is that the world gets destroyed so they can fix it, or that their hope is that there's evidence to show that the Democrats have been eating children this whole time. So they want this bad stuff to be true so they can stop it. And when I tell them it's not even true, there were never any children in tunnels being trafficked to the Democrats, they see that as me denying it or somehow working for the other side. And I'm just saying, no, you have no evidence. Lane Dion says their fights are just thumb wars. Yeah, the children. If these children, well, it came out in 2017, but along with Trump, you have this Q thing, and it's all about save the children. And they haven't saved any. So I'm doing the math. I'm like 2015, 2016, children. They're probably, having been around Democrats their entire lives, the survivors, those who haven't been sacrificed, they're probably Democrats. And they were probably old enough to have voted in this latest election. All right, let's go ahead and catch up on notes again. I had a glitch. Many of you were here for that. I try to see it. It was all across the Southwest. But the significance of it is last night, we were talking about this. We were talking about how the fake alien invasion scenario that unites us all might actually just be space junk. And Elon Musk, who's been blamed for the proliferation of mind junk on the internet, the mind virus, disease X, will also be held accountable in the same way for doing to the cyberspace commons, or rather doing to the low Earth orbit commons, the commons of low Earth orbit, what he's doing to cyberspace. So you have this outer space and cyberspace correlation, where the same character, Musk, is ruining both. The significance is that both of these relate to mind control. The space program is about programming the space between your ears. It's always been about worldview, and they control your worldview through the media, which is why it makes sense that Musk would be the rocket guy, a space pope, part of the space papacy. And I say that because Werner von Braun said that the first colonies on Mars would be set up like Rome. But he's also the owner of X. So Musk is connected to cyberspace and outer space, and he's the main polluter. So it makes sense that as Twitter ruins everything and causes Trump to win, that his company Starlink, which they're blaming for stealing the election, is now going to be looked at as, of course, this disaster in progress. So here's a comment from Sherry Jacobus. Oh, look, Elon Musk is destroying the evidence. Starlink uploaded votes, and Musk said he knew the election outcome 4 hours before the rest of us. Dems won down ballot in swing states, but we're to believe they voted straight Dem ticket but went for Trump over Harris. So the suggestion here is that Musk helped rig the election, and these satellites falling are likely him destroying the evidence. It's hilarious, but this is what we're seeing. It's actually not uncommon. I'm seeing a lot of this stuff, and we'll go through more of it, but a lot of people are saying that the election was... Okay, so we're getting buffering again. Must be what we're talking about. What is it we're saying that is so problematic? It might be other circumstances. It might be something else. Maybe it's something beyond my control. But I will do a reset, and I'll do whatever I can. I have a couple of comments I want to get to. Jim Brandy Mexico said, why isn't fake until proven real the minimum standard for any thinking person? Maybe it is only for thinking people and the masses are just still asleep. Fake until proven real means that you have shifted the burden of proof back. It means that you are no longer on their side of the screen, where you trust whatever's there. Your nose isn't against the monitor. You've got some objective distance if you've taken that stance of suspension of judgment. And the reason why it's not the way that most people consume media is that they're programmed to consume media passively, to not question the screen, although they're welcome to question the various narratives, but they can't question the basic assumption of what is presented as real. So they're programmed to be asleep, to be hoodwinked, the digital veil. Spirit Jordak 587 dies of a heart attack, and she was about to be replaced. Could be hope for Harris yet. Mango says, so what was once forbidden becomes fringe, and what was fringe becomes mainstream. This is a nightmare. Quoting Ministry. Now, is that true? I mean, it depends, because you have the acceptable fringe. Like, they don't care if you watch Netflix all day. They don't care if you watch X-Files all day. And these contain fringy ideas, but they're fringy ideas that are within the fictional universe. So you can have alien invasions, but you can't have NASA's lying and there's more continents. Like, you can't disrupt the big picture. Science fiction is very controlled. And I read somewhere today that dystopian fictions and dystopian movies are going to be huge in the next few years, which doesn't surprise me. We're going to see a lot of reinforcement programming. Captain Unhinged says, Richard Carrier and dark matter are the reasons I'm never going back to fake news ever again. Tim Osmond's the reason I won't be a believer for anything that doesn't come with undeniably extraordinary evidence. Yeah, all I ask for is just evidence. Doesn't even have to be all that extraordinary. Just support the claims. And they're always falling up short. Commenter from LG Rhythms, now lucid streaming. Our experiences go far beyond the physical and visible. That's why I intuitively know predictive programming is just scratching the surface. First level of interpretation. I think that we are looking at a mass deception, and the mass media has replaced religions as the monopoly over worldview, the big deceivers. I mean, religion's still a big part of this whole thing. it doesn't matter because these are subsets of the dominant paradigm. So they're allowed to exist and fight in war. It wouldn't matter. All right, so if you look at the screen, this is someone who has a convincing case to investigate the election. So I'm just going to go ahead and play a few seconds of it. And one thing about I've noticed a lot of these I don't know, like crisis actory videos where it's just somebody uploads someone else's video from TikTok, and the person talking seems like they have a script. And this seems very scripted, very crisis actory. But I notice a lot of them are in their cars. And I wonder why that is. I mean, like they pull over and like, oh yeah, 1,500 people are missing in Maui because the lasers from space incinerated them. Or there's 2,000 bodies in South Carolina from the hurricane that FEMA's hiding. Or FEMA is preventing people from getting help. You have all these people out there spamming these narratives, and they're just totally unaccountable. And other people upload this stuff as clickbait. So this guy, probably a QAnoner, uploads it, and he gets 3.8 million views. So it's all just money for them. It's all about the clicks. Truth is not the thing. But let me go ahead and play a few seconds here so you can hear her explain how Elon Musk stole the election for Trump.
I'll explain to you in layman's terms because you have to understand when it comes to computer programming jargon, you guys are not going to understand what the flying F I'm fucking talking about, okay? So anything that you guys don't understand or you want more clarification from, please message me. I have no problems explaining it to you. With that being said, okay, you also have to understand that when it comes to Starlink, okay, Starlink is it's an IPv4, it's an IPv6. Basically what that means is that it's a specific satellite link-up system that sends signals to whatever it's hooked up to. Doesn't matter what it is, like a normal...
Okay, anyway, she gets more unhinged as she goes. It takes her a while to get to the end where she really kind of loses it. But in 9 minutes here, she breaks it down. But the long and short of it is Musk stole it. It's pretty much like a repeated narrative. And it's everywhere. There are a lot of people, a lot of lefties who are basically delving into this election denialism. And I think their January 6th will be worse than Trump's January 6th. And even Rachel Maddow was hyping up the same thing, saying that it was strange that Musk seemed to have some kind of inside knowledge about how he was about to win.
The day before Trump made those remarks on Friday. On Friday, he said, you're never going to have to vote again after you vote for me this one time. The day before that, on Thursday last week, he didn't say that people wouldn't have to vote anymore once he was elected this November. No, the day before that, on Thursday, he told his supporters, not that they're not going to have to vote again, but that they don't have to vote this time, that they don't need to vote for him this November.
Because he was confident, but she thinks that it's because he can't help himself from just duper's delight, I guess, blurting out the truth. But here he says it on Fox.
We don't need the votes. I have so many votes.
We don't need the votes. I have so many votes. And this has actually kicked off a wave of election denialism on the left, which is kind of hypocritical. And I noticed Mike Rothschild's working hard to try to debunk it. And a literalist said she's a super genius explaining how Starlink and satellites work. Yeah, that's true. And I think their built-in assumption is that these are orbiting, low Earth orbit, satellites. But I think everything attributed to Starlink could absolutely, it can be. It could have been performed by Loon X. I think Loon X became Starlink. The only reason, and I think what happened is, Loon X was just stratospheric balloons. And they work. I don't think they really retired it. Okay, let's move on. Update to reports. Yeah, again, we're talking about Musk, his satellites falling because he's hiding the evidence. So here's another individual explaining how he saw something on TikTok. So you know how I talk about CSA? I see something on TV and I'm going to say it like it's true. It's just like hearsay. So here you go. The rumor mill is at work right now, and these are all Democrats. These are Democrat conspiracy theorists. Like, what's going on? They're saying Trump's shooting was staged. They're saying the election was stolen.
Came across something on TikTok.
Now he's whispering low so that nobody can hear him. Meanwhile, he's putting this online where this has been viewed a million times.
And I don't want to be the person that spreads false information or conspiracy theories. I don't want to do that, so I'm not going to share any information. You have to look for it for yourself. But
do your own research. This is like Q stuff. Do your own research, and then they provide the sources. But he's talking about the voting systems being hacked.
About the voting systems being hacked. And that is why.
I mean, I love it. So he's watching TikTok, and then he's giving us secondhand his interpretation of what he's seen on TikTok without citing specific videos. And this is just narrative building. It's a story. It's like a game of telephone. But it's going to get worse. It's not like they're all going to wake up tomorrow and say, oh, that was a dumb idea. Probably not true. Our election integrity is secure. We know we can trust our votes. But no, I'm seeing so many people just going off saying that they checked and their vote wasn't even tabulated. They can't find it.
The results came out the way that they came out. And if you notice, there were a lot of, because why would the presidential votes turn Republican and the rest of the votes Democrat? Anyway, not just that, but I'm trying to talk to you in code.
Trying to talk in code. Okay, he's trying not to say it because he doesn't want to sound like a conspiracy theorist.
It's not in me to try to spread conspiracy theories at all. But let's do it like this. Just search TikTok for the information to see if anybody else is.
Okay, we'll move on. This goes on for about 5 more minutes, and he's saying he's not trying to give you false hope. But there you go. He's a hopium dealer. He's like, maybe we can get Harris in there. Maybe we can expose what the Republicans did, and the information is there. So again, he said it's not impossible, just paraphrasing his final statements.
It just bothers me to hear stuff like this, but it's not impossible.
There's still hope. It's not impossible. Maybe we can have Harris after all. Oh, here's the video, by the way, of the from yesterday. We were talking about the 43 monkeys that were released, and South Carolina's on lockdown.
Texas Primate Research Center, which conducts experimental tests on primates for a variety of infectious diseases and diseases. Located on Castle Hall Road, traps have been set around the area, and the Genesee Police Department is currently at the scene using thermal imaging cameras to try to locate the animals. Residents are strongly advised to keep doors and windows closed to prevent these animals from entering their homes.
So there you are. If you're in South Carolina, close your doors, lock your windows, stay home. There's apes on the loose, monkeys on the loose. Yeah, Culty Talk says, I always get my solid info on TikTok. Exactly. It's amazing how they use it as a source. Like, they laugh at you if you say, hey, look at Wikipedia, which is really just a source of other sources. It just leads you places. It's not the final authority on anything. But people do cite TikTok, and I don't use TikTok. I get it secondhand. I find TikTok videos on Twitter. I never go there directly. Although, I should. I should be making use of it. And I have a TikTok account. And my Twitch account will auto-export clips. So if you go to Twitch, the Twitch account affiliated with the live streams, go to ips.monster and you go to Twitch, you could take clips and share them. And those clips I get, which I can then publish onto TikTok. So if you hear anything, or if there's a call that you want to have separated, I can put it on TikTok. Dwayne Obbit says, supposed eyewitness testimony and hearsay is sufficient for people to believe anything. Yeah, I think that's what it is. People trust, people are naive, and they will trust secondhand accounts, especially if it's a victim. That's why they use crisis actors. And we've seen this with all kinds of, we see it all the time actually, but with a friend who has some relative who works at the fire department that this is the case, and the media is hiding it. I know somebody who knew somebody, and send me money to GoFundMe, and I'll wire it to those fire departments. So you have scammers, you have actors, you're just liars all over. Meteorologists. You got chemtrail truthers threatening meteorologists. I'm surprised they haven't gone after pilots yet. Like they're radicalized because they think that the Weather Channel controls the weather. So you're going to call the weatherman and call the Weather Channel with a bomb threat because you think they sent the hurricane, and then you laugh at Greta when she says that man can affect the weather. Both sides reject the hook. Okay, the term CSA, because we live in the era of CSA. And then the DHS stole it from me. Think about it. The DHS premise is if you see something, say something. If you see something suspicious, call the Homeland Security. So they kind of hijacked our term, but the term is very revealing. Side Girl says, Trump's top advisor for the transition is Cantor Fitzgerald CEO Howard Lutnick, who was a major actor in the 9/11 WTC drama. Yeah, and Trump is inseparable from 9/11. He was there. He watched the planes hit. He's bearing false witness, and he was in predictive programming. He's Biff Tannen also, which is one of his predictive programming proxies, which means that he's also intimately connected with the PSYOP itself. And then you can add on to that, post 9/11, he was on a committee and he had come up with this idea of naming the new tower the World Trade Center Phoenix. Elford Yinglet says, Independence Center Mall shooting was 1 year ago today. Okay, Independence Center Mall. Which state was that in? And did anybody die? Okay, November 2023, Mark Anthony Greer, real event, with the exception of female mass shooters like Audrey Hale, low death toll, low body count, and it's because the metascriptors are sexist. It took them this long to get to have a non-male bowl cut shooter. They have the first woman shooter. It's like, wasn't it Women's History Month? What month is that when Audrey Hale shot up the school? But anyway, the body count was low, but it was fake. You could tell it was fake in a number of ways. The script gave it away. So 6 isn't impressive, but the way it was portrayed, the address, the dates, the mass media tie-ins, the predictive programming. Stranger Things, the series, had programming consistent and concurrent with all of the major shootings from 2022 to 2024, including the Trump thing. There were tie-ins there. Multiple tie-ins. Talking about Robert Cremo, the 4th of July parade shooter, has connections to Stranger Things. He was obsessed with Lee Harvey Oswald, and he had a 47 tattooed on the side of his head. So at that point, I said that they're going to do the JFK on Trump on TV, that they're going to hit him right there where his hat has the number 45, 47. I called it on that day in 2022 that it would be on that side of his head based on this character. And this shooter perfectly resembles one of the characters in Stranger Things. And the season finale of season 4 has an allusion to the JFK assassination and also to Trump. And it takes place in the form of Matthew Modine's character being shot. Modine played JFK, or rather he played Joker. So I had said that this number on the side of Trump's head is a Kubrick signature. It's a callback to Joker, the character representing JFK, in a movie that had multiple Oswald references and jokes. And then there's another Joker connection to the Trump shooting scenario. Mango says, what's expected for the 11th? I don't know what's up with that, but I know that a couple of years ago, I literally woke up at 11:11 on that day, and I woke up and got my phone. I mean, I don't know what it means, but yeah. A lot of people say it means something. It does mean something. I mean, there is such a thing as the numerology, but the symbolism is definitely intrinsic to their big meta-scripted worldview. There's an esoteric side of it. And there's a point where magic and media somewhat interface. Whether it's kind of the same thing. I mean, you could look at mass media, since it's primarily built on deception, as lesser magic. And lesser magic is really defined as the kind of stuff that you could explain through psychological manipulation and mind control or esoteric rituals like the Super Bowl stuff. Like they're somehow tapping into, as a resource, all the matrix batteries plugged into the black cube. I apologize for the buffering. I'll make it better. And soon we're going to have an upgrade. I plan to upgrade everything very soon. Alfred Yinglet says, it's worth pointing out how people forget the real events and remember the fake ones. Yeah, there's this thing called the misinformation effect, which is worth looking at here. The misinformation effect is real, even though the term misinformation is very subjective, and the media defines misinformation as stuff they don't agree with. So they kind of misappropriate this term. However, the misinformation effect is real. It's when a person's recall of a memory becomes less accurate because of post-event information. This is exactly what happens when the interrogator influences the person being questioned, that they can actually, get the person to arrive at answers they wouldn't have otherwise. They call this retroactive interference. And so retroactive interference is also at play in the Mandela effect, where they get the person to remember something from their past. At the same time, they're being presented with an alternate version of it, like an altered version. So you have someone ask the question, what do you remember? Fruit Loops spelled Fruit or Froot. And when the person tries to recall their childhood memory and they're looking at two versions, well, the false version can actually become or override their old version. Your new memories can bury the old memories. And this type of confusion happens all the time, this misinformation effect. And this explains the Mandela effect. In fact, the Mandela effect is a form of gaslighting combined with the misinformation effect accomplished through retroactive interference. It's a mind control game, really. It's a influence operation. But the point here is that the movies, just to get back to the comment, the movies that we see that reinterpret old events, that reinforce the programming, they tend to occupy the imagination and bury the news reports of it. So people remember things in a very subjective way as fed to them through the media. And it's all by design. So I have a couple of other comments on in the same line here. We were going through my notes, and I came across this article in The Atlantic which says, "You are the media. Bad news. Legacy media must compete against the choose your own reality. Choose your own adventure reality." So bad news, legacy media must compete against a choose your own adventure reality. This article is breaking down how we're at a point where people can move into their own subjective news bubbles and the impact of it. So he says here, if you are the media now, which is what Musk said after Trump won, he said, you are the media. If you are the media, then there is no longer a consensus reality informed by what audiences see and hear. Everyone chooses their own adventure. I've been calling it choose your own apocalypse. You can choose to believe in geoengineering, climate disaster, or climate change. You can believe in any sort of version of how it all ends. None of it matters. It's all subjective anyway. It says the internet destroyed monoculture years ago. As I wrote last December, it's recently felt harder to know what anyone else is doing, seeing, or hearing online anymore. So the point that he makes in this article is that when something goes viral, it doesn't even mean anything anymore because it may only be going viral to people who are tuned into that particular segment of reality. And the subjectivity of it all has destroyed, I think what he's pointing out here, has destroyed monoculture, meaning that the uniformity is breaking up. And this is just the Brave New World concept, the sea of irrelevance. And I point this out all the time. You can say something that's factually true, and it doesn't matter, because the lie is what is being accepted. So you have people who say, well, Trump faked the assassination attempt on 7/13, and it doesn't matter. The people who say it, who think that it's actually fake, believe everything else in the news, so it doesn't matter. You have to be a non-believer, an informed non-believer, for your non-belief to even weigh more than blind faith belief. Like, it's really the same category. There has to be some kind of filtering or processing of the information you consume. Otherwise, you're just a passive media receptacle, which is how people tend to operate. All right, let me go ahead and read some reviews of Nick Fuentes' house. This is blowback from his comments, and this story has kind of blown up. I just think it's funny. So here at Google Maps, Nick J. Fuentes' home has been reviewed 1 star. Someone else labeled it. Oh, they actually put here it's a public bathroom. Terrible. Incel's home, 2.5 stars. His body, our choice. His home, our choice. Fafo Place. Anyway, there are hundreds of these, and people have been driving by. He's the one who said, your body, my choice. And then it turns out he lives in suburban Chicago, and there's a movement to try to drive him out of town. I don't really feel sorry for him, although I think they are misinformed. He is a shock jock. He is a provocateur, and he doesn't believe anything he says. He's just really good at saying it, and that's why the government pays him to do it. He's actually a total hypocrite when it comes down to all of this stuff. He was saying, don't support Trump, vote for Harris. It'd be better for everybody. Then in 2028, we'll get Hitler. So he was all for Harris at the end. Then Trump wins, and now he acts like he's on Team Trump all over again. Okay, let's continue. I know it's trivial, Nick Fuentes, but it's important to keep up with the various PSYOP operatives. I think it's important to know what ideas are being allowed, because these are, of course, acknowledged characters. Doesn't matter if they say they're being censored. If they exist on the world stage, they're not censored. Censored perspectives include anyone advocating media skepticism, anyone describing the fakery as such. You're not supposed to know this stuff. That's why nobody in Trutherville, no influencers will ever talk about fakery. The higher their subscriber count, the less likely they'll ever say fake. They will never say it. It's like, nope, they'll say flat, but they won't say fake. Why is that? Fuentes is a failed accelerationist. He's the Groyper guy, the frog thing, and he had this idea, this whole cult built around basically America first, nationalism, getting non-whites out of government. He had this laundry list of ideas, but he's also associated with Ollie Alexander. Ollie Alexander, who was known for grooming teenage conservative males. And Nick Fuentes knew about this and turned a blind eye to it. For some reason, he backed Ollie Alexander, which has many speculating that those two have some kind of mutual blackmail situation. And Ollie Alexander has been credibly accused by many people of some terrible stuff, and I believe it all. Scammy Davis Jr., he organized Stop the Steal, and he was also admitted, Owen Schroyer said that Ollie Alexander grabbed his Kevin Spacey. He grabbed him, grabbed the guy. That's crazy. And so I'm just saying that's crazy that nobody's thrown this guy in jail yet. Like, he's protected. It gets even worse because according to the rumors, Ollie Alexander was sort of a gatekeeper for InfoWars. And to be on InfoWars, you had to give him some kind of compromising video or something. So it's just a really twisted place. And Fuentes is right there. So I don't think he's serious. He's a major Poe. Yeah, and I love Tim Pool always advocating for civil war. And yet he's hiding. I mean, Tim Pool is getting paid by tenants, and he claims he didn't know. So, and again, I think all these are characters, more or less. They're operatives. But the narrative is that Tim Pool, Benny Johnson, and many other these right-wing podcasters are being paid $100,000 a week by Putin. And Tim Pool's very questionable anyway. He had Donnie Darkind on his program. Donnie Darkind was this character pretending to expose Donald Trump as the Antichrist, and then he went offline when he was doxxed as this major MAGA person. So you got this MAGA guy with a huge following, making a lot of money, who's also playing this anti-Trump character. And I stopped following Donnie Darkind when I realized he was using ChatGPT to write his speeches. I'm like, I'm not going to read sermons about Trump and the Bible and all kinds of apocalyptic mumbo jumbo from some anonymous guy using ChatGPT, and yet there are people lapping it up. Salty Siren says, Nick Fuentes was the prereq for the new narratives that Hispanic men are white supremacists. Right, white Hispanics like George Zimmerman. Whole new category. They had to maintain the narrative. And you might be right about that. You might be correct about that. Because wasn't it, who was it, Enrique, the Proud Boy? Enrique Tarrio was the Proud Boy who I think he had to serve, 22 years. Sentenced to 22 years this last year. He may have had that drop to 11 years. I have to look into it. But anyway, he's like the leader of the Proud Boys. And it never really made sense because I'm pretty sure that he's Afro-Cuban. Yeah, there we go. He was part of Latinos for Trump. So you're right. They did this Latinos for Trump thing and try to make them the face of nationalism. Very interesting. And I think something else too. It turns out that he was a federal informant and nobody was surprised. The pill bottle says, will the worldwide synchronized metascripting ever end? No, it will never end. Religion and government have always been somewhat synonymous. They've never really been entirely separate. If you look at the definition of religion as I do, simply being a worldview monopoly, like a closed system, fictional universe that you can put people into. And the various religions have all, competed for supremacy, but ultimately what wins is the religion of nascitology, which masquerades itself as science and with supposed objective facts to back its claims, but it's just a reiteration of these old cosmologies, but it's dressed up with science fiction. So the same people are in control. It's the same pyramid. It's the same programmers. So nothing's changed. In fact, they've only deepened their control, and they've melded this entire collective. We're all into it. All the old religions had to kneel in 2020 to the religion of mainstream media and scientism. It was COVID Akbar, conquered everybody. Even at Mecca, they stopped running around the meteor. Like COVID Akbar. COVID was the god construct they introduced that cowed everybody else, because not only did it shut down the world, it shut down all the traditional religious celebrations, but it allowed the priests of the new religion to flex, to show their power and to represent themselves as the savior. The scientists became the new priesthood. So it trumped everything else. And you may recall they had some preachers who didn't want to quit going to church on Sundays, and they made big stories about these individuals, and they all died. Like, obviously, crisis actors. Girl says, Enrique was not physically present in D.C. on J6. Well, just to be clear, too, we have to keep this in mind, January 6th was not only an entirely staged movie production, but Donald Trump was part of it. Don't be lulled into the complacency of thinking that Donald Trump is innocent And he's down here giving a speech, and the deep state's staging a riot. He's a ringleader. He was there as a honeypot operation to bring all their people there and justify the claims that there was this big outrage that would lead to the storming of the Capitol. But the storming of the Capitol was planned way before Trump was even in office. It is the script. And you can find a basis for this ever since Waco. And when Trump said on 10/5/2017 that this was the calm before the storm, this is the storm. And if you have any questions about January 6th, look up Woo's News, as Diana Southard says. They will never stop. They will never. Here's why. It's because the masses have been turned into believers. And there's a dynamic here. There's a relationship between the knowers and the believers, the programmers and the programmed. And the programmers are themselves at least 95% immersed in the programming. So they're not in the know. And that is never going to change. That structure won't change. It's just designed this way. It's always going to be the few over the many, and their primary weapon is mind control, and this is ancient. But it's been given a few upgrades. But it's definitely not a new concept. And I can list a few movies that I think are probably required watching for Metascript analysts, because we talk about the hoaxes. We talk about media fakery, but we also talk about the script itself, because that's what fake news is. Fake news, in the aggregate, becomes fake history. And it's not just random fake news stories. It's all part of a larger script. This is what I call the metascript. And we do this metascript analysis, and we examine these big stories. And nothing is really new here. It's all kind of reiterations of old concepts and ideas, but the consolidation is mass media worldview, which is a closed system, and it's told from the perspective of the power elite, and it is the worldview that all mankind has been dragged into. How do they accomplish this? Fake moon landing, Kubrick. 9/11, Kubrick. 2020, Kubrick. These major events that drag mankind en masse into the alternate reality game where we're all on the same sheet. So the purpose to fake news, the purpose for fake news is not really to inform you, it's to conform you to a prefabricated set of events, a worldview, which is history. I call it history telling. And again, Orwell, those who control the present, control the past and the future. It's the same thing. You're controlling the present through fake news. And when I say fake news, we have a really nuanced take on it. I'm not saying everything is fake. They'll often report on things like the weather or local events where, yeah, they're telling the truth. But the nature of a good liar is that they are skilled. So they know when to lie. So they don't lie with every breath. They don't lie with every story. It's only when they need to. And they do so strategically when they can get away with it. But they don't lie most of the time to gain your trust. A good liar won't lie with every breath, because then you would see through it. And media is the same way. So maybe it's telling the truth 90% of the time, but it's also doing so from the establishment worldview, which lies by omission. So it's already framing itself in a certain way where you could already say it's built on an edifice of lies. But then at any moment, their reportage mechanisms, the media information gatherers, the reporters on the scenes, can be converted. They can be more or less not co-opted, but they have another, you could say, another function. And that function is media fakery. And as a rule of thumb, anything they can fake in the movies, they can fake on the news. And if they can fake it on the news, everybody will believe it. Culty Talk says they want social media to go off the rails so they can bring in their solution, complete control, and perhaps one media authority a la 84. Thoughts, anyone? 100% agree with you. That's exactly what I mean when I say that X is disease X. They need a scapegoat. So Musk is a scapegoat for a lot of things. He's the fall guy for free speech. They're going to say, because of disease X, because of these mind viruses, we had a civil war. We have to collectively agree to censorship. So I've been saying that the the iPhone is essentially, this is the Bible that we're all carrying in our hands. But at this point, it's still being curated, censored. They have to get rid of the non-canonical, the heretical, anything that doesn't agree with the big picture. And once they've completed that, once they've killed off X, and nothing else ever gets in, they've actually caused the universe of ideas to shrink a little bit, and they pushed all the fringe ideas off the edge. Once they've curated the worldview and perfected it, yeah, then we're in a closed system and it will never open back up. So I agree. You're totally right on this. Isabel N says, Saturn will station on the Taurus full moon Friday. There are connections going back to CV19 with the alignments. This is the last full moon with Pluto in Capricorn for a long time. So Pluto went into Capricorn. Was that on 2/2/2022? The Pluto return? The position it was in when America was... Yeah, here we go. In the U.S. horoscope... Yeah, that's it. 27th degree Capricorn is a turning point. There's a lot of interesting correlations between the founding of America and Pluto. So here is the reference to the Pluto return. Pluto will reach 27 degrees Capricorn on February 22nd, 2022. And this is the degree and the sign it was in during the signing of the Declaration of Independence, July 4th, 1776. So America's birthday correlated with 2/2/2022. A lot of fascinating stuff happened that month when it comes to numerology and the numbers. They were obviously referencing this astrological alignment. Lean Dion says, when NASA claimed they found water on Mars like a week after the Martian movie dropped. Yes. The IPS articulating concurrent programming is very important. Yeah, concurrent programming is actually damning. It's evidence of conspiracy. Predictive programming is too. It's certainly indications, but the further back the predictive programming goes and the more voluminous it is, the more likely the people who hear about it will say, oh, you're just cherry picking. It's the sharpshooter fallacy. You have so many examples. So they have that kind of way of ignoring it. But with concurrent programming, you have to acknowledge that, no, there is intelligent and deliberate synchronization here with specific messaging, and all of it's political. And not only is it political, but it's like these are predictions of future political events that haven't happened yet. So, for example, Game of Thrones, House of the Dragon comes out as Roe v. Wade is overturned. And the first episode is like the nightmare scenario as envisioned by the pro-abortion side. Basically that if they lose this right, you're going to have these barbaric scenes out of the Middle Ages where the queen has to die in childbirth because the state needs a male. And even though she's a powerful woman, she has no control over her body. So they give you these really intense visuals to go along with the news, but it was synchronized. But for it to be synchronized, the Game of Thrones, at some level, the script writers had to be told to put this specific thing in there because it was known that it would align with the leak of Roe v. Wade, which itself was a repeat of something from 50 years prior, 73. Lucid Stream says, benevolent Truman Show. Yeah, something I've brought up a few times is that it could be the case that we live in the village and that the elders have the best of intentions. And they lie to us about the nature of reality, and they scare us with their monster costumes for our own good. And the alternative is what? And this is the rationale for using, in fact, there was that statement by Polybius who said that it's superstition that maintains the cohesion of the Roman state. And I would agree that today that is the case, only instead of superstitions, these are hyperstitions. And hyperstition is kind of a new term, but it refers to fake things that are, it's like almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, but they never have to manifest. Fake things that are assumed real because they exist in an echo chamber that reinforce their existence. And these are approved. There are approved hyperstitions, like mass shooters, like space junk, like numerous things we can point out that don't really exist, weapons of mass destruction, etc. But everyone believes they do. It's reinforced in all of the programming. And then once in a while, they do a psyop where they pretend it's real on the world stage, and it maintains its existence. But if they don't maintain it, they cease to exist. I mean, when was the last time we had a suicide bomber waging a jihad? Like, no, that was replaced by the incel shooter. Like, when I mean, they phase out various hyperstitions. When was the last time we had a serial killer? No, they're all mass shooters. They switched out. Culty Talk says they started posting articles about the dry weather season in New York weeks ago, and right on time, multiple fires weeks later, quote, caused by unattended campfires. You know, long before I started looking at the Metascript and fake news, you know, I was reading about druids and about the various solar-based religious narratives, these various sun god things. I was studying, like David Icke, for example, in The Biggest Secret writes about this stuff. And he in particular said that the elite perform these rituals undercover on the solstices and the equinoxes and then the in-between dates. So these 8 major holidays that are being practiced in secret. And I started to note that it seemed like every summer solstice, we would have fires on the southwest side of town, near the river. Always in the same place, near the fire department training area. But I always thought it was kind of interesting that we'd have these consistent fires almost always aligning with the solstice. And, you know, correlation, causation, maybe it's just a coincidence, but it kind of got me thinking that you cannot separate the fire departments from the major psyops. Look at 9/11. Look at every major mass shooting event where the first responders, the hospitals are all part of it. You know, you have the PSYOP entertainment complex is not just crisis actors. You got directors, you got the Department of Homeland Security, you have the integration of politicians, law enforcement, first responders, and fire departments. So they can do anything on the world stage. They can demolish buildings and say terrorists did it, and they can start fires and say climate change did it. Salty Siren says, I quit smoking and my dreams came back with an absolute lucid vengeance. I hear that a lot from people. That the marijuana smoking suppresses dreams. And when they stop smoking, their dreams come back. And it's probably worth talking about drugs in the context of mass mind control and what drugs are being promoted and how they're being promoted. And it seems like marijuana was soft sold to the Americans. Like, dude, where's my car? Munchies, just like Beavis and Butthead. It's non-threatening. Whereas when it was prohibited, the propaganda, like reefer madness, was that you smoke weed, you'll go crazy. And so it's like, how do they change from reefer madness to softening its image? And now it's like every other gas station here is closed down and it's a dispensary. It's like dispensaries everywhere. And I think there's a conspiracy here involved, like getting everyone high and then also phasing them out of energy drinks with high sugar and giving them, like loading them up on vitamin B and all kinds of essentially like almost nootropics, like almost smart drugging people, and then getting them high, and then they plug into their phones. They plug into the simulation, and then they have the Oculus, and it becomes a more immersive experience. Like, I think they're trying to optimize their mind control system also by not just our conditioning, but the types of drugs that they promote. So we're more susceptible to the programming. Okay, let's continue. Lucid Stream says, today the THC concentration is nothing like 20 or 30 years ago. Right, and I don't think there's any guardrails on it. Like, I think it's almost an entirely different drug. And I'm not saying I'm against it or anything. I'm just pointing out the trend. Like, it's a major cultural shift. And these things don't happen on their own. And it's likely, I think, to be consistent with all of the digital media immersion and to deepen it. It's all about the metaverse, getting us out of the real world and into our basements, into our screens, where then we can all be subject to the psyops. Behold the end war live. Leave the world behind, go into your basement. Again, anagram. Behold the end war live. Watch it all on TV. And with the non-skeptical passive news consumers, both main and alternative, there's no defense. The Psy-War is going to dispense mind viruses to all the mind AIDS patients who have no defense, and they're all going to just go with the program. And they're going to agree that we need to shut down and censor certain aspects of free speech because the commons need to be protected. The same reason we need to stop billionaires from flooding space with their internet satellites. The Pox bottle says Metal Gear Solid 2 Sons of Liberty exposed the Metascript simulation in 2001. Yeah, I'm always interested in because I don't play these games, but I'm interested in these clips. Reverse History played some clips from Metal Gear Solid, but we have to look at movies, video games, comics, as well as the news and the movies. But there is no part of the mass mediation process that is exempt, and anything that reaches critical mass, anything that's projected onto the collective psyche, is going to be a conduit for covert propaganda. And that's what it is. There's been a lot of confusion deliberately inserted into the conversation about what predictive programming is. It is nothing more than covert propaganda. That's all it is. And it only works because people don't know that all of the entertainment media is synchronized with future fake news events. And when you point it out without a full understanding, it probably sounds crazy because you're just pointing out coincidences, trying to convince them these can't be coincidences. But then you don't have an explanation as to who could be causing it, because there's no way man could do it, has been the main talking point. That there's too many connections, it's too synchronized, man couldn't possibly have done this. And that's a very limiting perspective to say that man couldn't do it. It's kind of daunting to try to figure it out. It's like, well, there's no way one person, there's no way. It's not about one person. It's not about Kubrick, that there are many meta scripters. And this process of saturating our minds with programming for future news events on their history. They're convincing us in advance. Oh, Isabel Ann asks, did you watch Blink Twice for P. Diddy concurrent programming? I watched it. I finished it this morning, and 100% spot on there. So the P. Diddy is connected with this movie very closely. We have Blink Twice, Channing Tatum, who's also the face of Fly Me to the Moon. So 2 movies about mind control. But more specifically, it's about this island, this Epstein-like island, and these parties where everybody's dressed in white, and they're all given some mysterious substance. So the connection is Diddy, the white parties, the cameraman blackmailing everybody, and the mysterious substance, which in Diddy's case is the so-called baby oil. In the movie, it's snake oil or snake poison. But I think there's some definite correlation here, lots of overlap. There was something else about it. I think it's also, there's a strong subtext of feminism and some statements about, I think, the patriarchy as well. Because it's like a male-dominated island. Women are being abused. The 2 women protagonists, the main characters, fight back. And at the end, they share a cigarette, which is like a symbol of women's lib, thanks to Edward Bernays, the creator, the progenitor of public relations. And of course, Edward Bernays is a blood relative of the first CEO of Netflix. But Blink Twice, though. Blink Twice is definitely concurrent programming with P. Diddy, which makes me doubt the story. Like, I'm sorry to disappoint the QAnoners with all their lurid fan fiction stories about what happened at P. Diddy's island or at his parties. Like, people don't know, but they're running with the story, and it's because it gets clicks. But the more predictive and concurrent programming you have, and concurrent programming is more damning. The more you have, the more likely you're looking at something fake. Like Andrew Tate. is he really guilty of all the human trafficking or whatever he's been accused of? Or is he a character playing the role of I guess you'd consider him to be an influencer who's a paragon of toxic masculinity? Like, is that who he really is? Or is this a character he's portraying? Well, the month that he gets put under house arrest, the movie Speak No Evil comes out. And the movie has a villain that is based on Tate. So now I'm looking at Andrew Tate as, again, remember, he was arrested after he was trolled by Greta Thunberg for owning 33 Bugattis. So then he says something to her, he's eating pizza, and the pizza box gives away his location. And then he gets put under investigation. So my point being, Andrew Tate looks like Cypher from The Matrix. He looks like Anton LaVey. He's the character in the movie Speak No Evil. He's fake as well. I mean, all of these big influencers are likely actors. His father's CIA. He's always got a chessboard in front of him. So he must understand the world stage, that it's a chessboard. Roxy said, heard today the last Diddy white party was in 2009. Planned rollout much, years in the making. Okay. The Pox Bottle says, early Resident Evil games had the umbrella logo synchronization with 2020. Silent Hill on the occult side. Right, the Umbrella Corporation, the umbrella symbol. And then you had, I think there was a connection to a raccoon city and Corona, an anagram. Of course, Resident Evil has the underground base, and you have the character named Alice in Wonderland connections. Alice in Wonderland is I think, a retelling of the story of Persephone going into the underworld. Very prominent theme in the mystery schools, which makes sense. The mysteries of Persephone and the underworld journey. This is all like, it's a huge part of the ceremonies of the big mystery schools. And so it's not insignificant that you often see the same character in mass media. Like, Alice in Wonderland, or Dolores in Westworld, Truman in The Truman Show. These characters who get dragged into this alternate reality, Dorothy and Oz. And there are many more examples, but it's a recurring theme. And one of the things about this, all these mass media movies, not only are they predicting fake news, but they're also based on a lot of the same themes of the religion that the media has supplanted. Like, I do say, in all seriousness, that outer space is the replacement for heaven. And the names of all the planets and gods, it's all really just a religious construct. And that the rocket is, in fact, an obelisk. It's a reiteration of an obelisk. It's not just a coincidence. It is literally that. It's called syncretism. We're looking at a syncretic blend of ancient worldview and modern, I guess, the modern worldview, which is based on, of course, science, but it's all just dressing. We live in like a science fiction version of Mystery Babylon. Okay, let's see here. Salty Siren says, penguins are being appropriated like crazy lately. I have some clips I'm compiling for a montage. Looking forward to it. We have blue penguins here. I've seen them once. They're small blue penguins at the zoo here. I saw when they were building the tank, and they're like the size of water bottles. They're extremely fast. I mean, for the way that they walk, penguins, they look like, they waddle, but they fly underwater. They literally fly underwater. Like they swim better than most birds can fly. And emperor penguins are the deepest diving of all birds. If you get the newsletters, today I sent out the cyborg penguins. And what they're doing is they are using blowtorches to melt all the fake trees. I often talk about the psyops are merely trees in a forest of fakery. And people, like truthers in particular, will see a psyop and they'll say, oh, that's fake. But they think everything else is real. It's like, it doesn't matter if you call out one fake thing, like one fake school shooting, it's not good enough. You have to look at all of them because they have the same production company. So once we've realized that we're looking at a forest of fakery, we set to work just clear cutting all that misinformation. But in today's newsletter, I sent out an image of cyborg penguins, and the cyborg represents the singularity, which they have achieved. They're on their own. They're a evolutionary leap forward. But the blowtorching, because I thought, well, if I could have it melting the rubber fake trees, it might be a stronger message. All right, let's continue. Harris fundraising. This is another example of this election denialism. A Harris fundraising fine print signals recount effort. Now, this has been viewed 235,000 times. Most of the comments are in favor of it, that we need to do a recount. They need to act quickly. She hasn't conceded. Tons of hopium. It reminds me of Trumpers 2020, leading up to January 6th. The thing is, this is fake. I found out later it's fake.